were taught that kindness earns respect. But if that were true, the kindest people will be the most powerful, and they are not. Instead, they are ignored, exploited, spoken over, and slowly erased. This video solves one painful question. Why does being good so often make you weak in the eyes of society? Kindness, when displayed without restraint, is rarely interpreted as moral depth. It is interpreted as openness, and openness in social psychology is read as accessibility. The human mind is conditioned to value what resists possession, not what offers itself freely. When you extend warmth, patience, forgiveness, and accommodation without friction, you communicate a silent message. Your emotional energy is abundant, unguarded, and inexpensive. Society does not respond to this message with gratitude. It responds with consumption. Social power is not measured by how much you can give, but by how difficult it is to extract from you. People subconsciously scan others for signals of cost. Is there resistance here? Is there consequence? Is there effort required to gain attention, approval, or emotional labor? Unrestricted kindness removes all three. It lowers the psychological price of access to you. And when access is cheap, it becomes habitual. When it becomes habitual, it loses value. Over time, what was once praised becomes expected, and what is expected is no longer respected. Emotional availability functions like a door left permanently open. At first, it appears inviting, even noble. But soon, people stop knocking. They enter without acknowledgement, rearrange the furniture, and leave without gratitude. They do not do this out of malice. They do it because the human psyche adapts quickly to generosity and recalibrates it as baseline. Once kindness becomes baseline behavior, its absence is punished, not its presence rewarded. You are no longer seen as generous. You are seen as defective the moment you hesitate. Strength, in contrast, is associated with selectivity. The strong are not emotionally unavailable, but emotionally controlled. Their kindness is conditional, timed, and deliberate. Because it is not guaranteed, it carries weight. When they offer warmth, it is felt. When they withdraw it, it is noticed. This contrast creates psychological gravity. Unrestricted kindness creates none. It flattens emotional terrain and removes all tension. And without tension, there is no hierarchy. People often confuse being liked with being valued. Liking is emotional comfort. Value is perceived power. Excessive kindness may increase comfort, but it erodes authority. You become safe, predictable, and manageable. You are no longer a variable in the social equation, but a constant. Constants are useful, but they are rarely influential. They are relied upon, not deferred to. They are leaned on, not looked up to. There is also a deeper, more unsettling truth. Kindness without strength invites projection. Others project their unmet needs, frustrations, and expectations onto those who appear endlessly accommodating. Because you do not push back, you become a container for emotional overflow. Over time, this transforms perception. You are no longer seen as kind by choice, but kind by necessity. Not generous, but dependent. Not compassionate, but afraid of conflict. This interpretation may be inaccurate, but social power is not governed by truth. It is governed by appearance. In hierarchical systems, emotional restraint is misread as confidence. Emotional generosity is misread as insecurity. The one who gives freely appears to need acceptance. The one who withholds appears to possess it. This inversion is cruel, but consistent. Society does not reward inner virtue. It rewards signals of self-sufficiency. Kindness, when excessive, signals the opposite. It implies that you are seeking harmony because you cannot enforce respect. Over time, people begin to test the limits of your generosity. Small boundary violations are introduced, not consciously, but instinctively. Requests increase. Demand becomes normalized. Disrespect slips in disguise as familiarity. Because kindness has no edge, there is nothing to push against. Each concession shifts your perceived position downward. You do not fall suddenly. You descend gradually through 1,000 silent allowances. The tragedy is that many remain kind in the hope that consistency will eventually be recognized as integrity. But social psychology does not work on moral accumulation. It works on contrast and consequence. Without consequence, behavior continues. Without contrast, perception dulls. Your kindness, once pure, becomes invisible. And invisibility is the true death of social power. Respect is not an emotional reaction. It is a psychological calculation. The human mind does not ask how kind you are, how patient you remain, or how much you endure. It asks a far more primitive question. What happens if I cross this person? Boundaries answer that question. Benevolence does not. When kindness is offered without limits, it creates comfort but removes consequence, and comfort without consequence dissolves respect at its root. Boundaries are invisible lines that communicate self-valuation. They announce that your time, energy, attention, and emotional labor are finite and protected. When these lines exist, others adjust their behavior accordingly. When they do not, others adapt in a different way. They begin to treat you as an extension of their needs rather than an independent force. This shift happens quietly, without hostility, and often without awareness. It is not cruelty that erodes respect. It is permission. Benevolence speaks the language of goodwill. Boundaries speak the language of cost. Social power listens only to the latter. A person who gives endlessly but never resists is perceived as morally pleasant yet structurally weak. Their presence is welcomed, but their position is low. They are liked for what they provide, not regarded for what they represent. Respect, by contrast, is tied to friction. It grows where behavior must be negotiated rather than assumed. Many people fear that boundaries will make them appear cold, selfish, or unkind. This fear itself reveals a psychological imbalance. It implies that acceptance is earned through self-erasure. In reality, boundaries do not repel healthy respect. They repel entitlement. Those who withdraw when you establish limits were never aligned with you. They were aligned with access to you. And access, when unrestricted, always attracts those who take more than they give. The absence of boundaries teaches others how to treat you. Every time you tolerate lateness, dismissiveness, intrusion, or disrespect in the name of kindness, you deliver a silent lesson. You demonstrate that your discomfort is negotiable, that your standards are flexible, and that your reactions are muted. Over time, these lessons accumulate into a profile. People do not consciously decide to respect or disrespect you. They follow the behavioral map you provide. Boundaries also introduce uncertainty, and uncertainty is a key ingredient of authority. When people do not know exactly how far they can go, they proceed carefully. Caution creates attention. Attention creates respect. Benevolence removes this uncertainty. It reassures others that no matter what they do, the response will be forgiving. Forgiveness has moral value, but in social hierarchies, predictability is weakness. The predictable can be exploited without risk. There is a fundamental asymmetry between those who enforce boundaries and those who do not. The boundary enforcer defines the terms of interaction. The boundaryless adapt to them. Adaptation is survival behavior, not dominant behavior. When you constantly adjust to preserve harmony, you position yourself as the one who needs a relationship more. Power flows toward those who can walk away, not those who endure everything to stay. It is also important to understand that respect does not require aggression. Boundaries are not about hostility or intimidation. They are about clarity. A calm refusal carries more authority than a loud concession. A measured withdrawal commands more respect than a dramatic sacrifice. Strength is quiet because it does not need to justify itself. Kindness, when anxious, over-explains. It hopes to be understood. Boundaries expect to be accepted. When benevolence replaces boundaries, resentment inevitably follows. The kind person absorbs frustration, disappointment, and violation until it leaks out in passive ways. This passive resentment further damages respect because it introduces inconsistency. Others sense emotional instability beneath the surface generosity. What once seemed noble begins to feel manipulative or weak. The tragedy is that this outcome was not caused by cruelty, but by the refusal to draw lines early. In social structures, those who are respected are not those who give the most, but those who control access to themselves. Their kindness is deliberate, not compulsive. Their generosity is an expression of surplus, not obligation. Boundaries transform kindness from a liability into a signal of strength. Without them, benevolence becomes an open invitation to erosion, a slow surrender disguised as virtue. Human beings do not evaluate morality in a vacuum. They evaluate it through context, position, and perceived dominance. The same action, performed by different individuals, produces radically different interpretations. When someone with power shows kindness, it is admired as magnanimity. When someone without power shows the same kindness, it is dismissed as submission. Intent is irrelevant. Perception rules, and perception is shaped by hierarchy. This is why moral behavior does not automatically elevate social standing. In fact, when morality is displayed without leverage, it often lowers it. Society assumes that goodness without force is not a choice, but a necessity. The generous are suspected of compensation. The forgiving are suspected of fear. The patient are suspected of dependence. These assumptions are unfair, but they are psychologically consistent. People look for signs of dominance first, and only then do they assign moral value. Power reframes behavior. It turns restraint into discipline and aggression into authority. Without power, the same behaviors are reinterpreted negatively. Restraint becomes passivity. Aggression becomes insecurity. Kindness becomes weakness. This is not because people are malicious, but because the mind seeks coherence. It needs to believe that those at the top are there for a reason, and that those below belong there as well. Moral narratives are adjusted to fit existing hierarchies. Those who act morally without social leverage often believe that consistency will eventually be recognized as integrity. They expect a moral accounting, a moment when goodness is rewarded for its own sake. But social systems do not operate on delayed justice. They operate on immediate signals. If moral behavior does not alter your position, it is absorbed into the background. Worse, it may be used as justification for keeping you where you are. You are seen as reliable, agreeable, and safe, but not formidable. There is also a darker mechanism at play. When someone lower in the hierarchy displays moral superiority, it creates discomfort. It threatens the moral self-image of those above them. To resolve this tension, observers reinterpret behavior as weakness rather than virtue. This protects the existing order. The powerful remain powerful, and the moral remain harmless. Kindness is reframed not as a challenge, but as compliance. This explains why moral people are often respected in theory, but ignored in practice. They are praised abstractly, but sidelined concretely. Their values are acknowledged, but their voices are discounted. Society separates moral worth from social worth. One is decorative, the other is functional. Without power, morality becomes a symbol rather than a force. Intent also fails because it is invisible. Others do not experience your inner struggle, your discipline, or your sacrifice. They experience only outcomes. If your kindness does not produce change, it is not interpreted as strength. If your forgiveness does not alter behavior, it is not seen as wisdom. Results define perception, and results require leverage. There is a cruel paradox here. The more sincerely someone tries to act morally without power, the more they risk being interpreted as naive. Their refusal to assert themselves is mistaken for inability rather than choice. Their humility is read as self-doubt. Their patience is read as low status. In this way, morality without power becomes self-defeating. It reinforces the very hierarchy it hopes to transcend. Power, therefore, is not the enemy of morality. It is the amplifier. Without it, virtue whispers. With it, virtue commands. Society listens only to commands. This is why those who wish to remain morally intact must also become strategically strong, not to dominate, but to ensure that their actions are interpreted as voluntary rather than forced. Until power is present, moral behavior remains vulnerable to misinterpretation. It floats without anchor, admired in isolation but ineffective in reality. People do not ask whether you are good. They ask whether you matter. And in social psychology, mattering precedes meaning. Without position, intent dissolves into invisibility, and morality becomes a private comfort rather than a public force. Social power is built not on what you give, but on what you control. The human mind assigns value through scarcity, not abundance. What is always available fades into the background. What must be earned commands attention. Strategic withholding is not cruelty. It is structure. It is a deliberate decision to regulate access to your time, energy, approval, and emotional presence so that they retain psychological weight. When everything is given freely, nothing is valued. This applies not only to material resources, but to emotional ones. Constant availability removes anticipation. Endless agreement removes tension. Immediate forgiveness removes consequence. Without these elements, social interactions lose hierarchy. You become a service, not a figure. Services are useful, but they are not influential. They are replaced without hesitation. Withholding introduces friction, and friction generates respect. When people cannot predict your responses with certainty, they pay attention. Attention is a currency of power. If others know that your approval is automatic, it means nothing. If they know it must be owned, it shapes their behavior. This is not manipulation. It is how all social systems naturally function. Employers, institutions, leaders, and even cultures rely on selective access to maintain authority. Strategic withholding also protects your internal resources. Those who give endlessly operate from depletion, not strength. Over time, depletion alters posture, tone, and presence. Others sense this and adjust their behavior accordingly. Fatigue repels respect. Control restores it. When you are selective, your generosity comes from surplus. It feels grounded rather than anxious. Others respond to the stability even if they cannot articulate why. There is a misconception that withholding creates distance, and distance creates disconnection. In reality, distance creates gravity. What is slightly out of reach draws focus. What is fully accessible invites neglect. This principle operates in friendships, relationships, workplaces, and public life. The individuals who are most respected are rarely those who are constantly present. They are those whose presence is measured. Strategic withholding also redefines kindness. Instead of being a reflex, it becomes a decision. This shift alone changes perception. A kindness that is chosen feels different from a kindness that is automatic. It carries intention. It suggests autonomy. Others sense that you could withhold, but you did not. That awareness elevates the act. Without the possibility of refusal, generosity loses meaning. Another crucial aspect is emotional pacing. Immediate emotional availability teaches others to offload their problems onto you without consideration. Delayed response teaches them that access has limits. Limits encourage self-regulation. When people are forced to sit with their own discomfort rather than immediately transferring it to you, they unconsciously respect your boundaries. You are no longer a dumping ground. You are a presence that must be approached with intention. Social power also depends on the ability to withdraw without explanation. Those who feel compelled to justify every absence, delay, or refusal reveal insecurity. Explanation seeks permission. Withholding seeks acceptance. Silence, when used sparingly, is a powerful signal. It implies that your inner world does not require constant validation. This unsettles those accustomed to control through emotional proximity. Importantly, strategic withholding is not about punishment. It is about calibration. You adjust your output based on behavior. Respect increases access. Disrespect reduces it. This creates a feedback loop that trains others how to engage with you. Without this loop, behavior stagnates. People do not improve in environments without consequence. They only consume. There is also a personal transformation that occurs. When you stop giving reflexively, you regain awareness of your own value. You become less reactive and more deliberate. This internal shift radiates outward. Others perceive it as confidence, even if nothing else changes. Power is often nothing more than the external reflection of internal restraint. In the end, those who hold social power are not those who dominate, but those who are not easily reached. Their attention is finite. Their approval is selective. Their presence is owned. This is not because they are superior, but because they have learned the psychology of scarcity. Where kindness floods, power evaporates. Where generosity pauses, authority begins.